9:27, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, online, on your radio and on TV.
Shall we take a look at today's front page newspapers? The Sunday Times first, leading on the Prime Minister's U-turn on green policies, which is just about infuriating everybody.
The Observer says that the PM is facing fury in rural areas for this post-Brexit food strategy.
And the Express calls on the Prince of Wales to stay out of politics after rumours swirl about his disapproval of the Rwanda plan.
The Mail on Sunday has Priti Patel's rebuke to Prince Charles on the Rwanda plan.
So let's have a look inside the newspapers as well and look at the main stories. Spiked editor Tom Slater joins us and anthropologist Marianne Huta. And a very good morning. Thanks for coming in again. Who are we starting with? Mary. Oh, and this menopause story. Tell us all about this.
So, I think probably most people have been aware that lots of celebrities have been coming out, women in middle and later ages saying, hang on a minute, yes, the menopause is really tricky. The pre-menopause is really tricky. It's this terrible taboo. Davina McCall did a big documentary about kind of lots of people revealing, I thought I was going mad, so did I. Or, you know, there's huge impacts on your ability to work, your mood, your physical state, how you're feeling. And if society doesn't acknowledge it, then you feel hugely unsupported and there's no medical help. And there's this kind of idea of medical sexism. It's a women's problem. It's old women being tricky. Or they're just kind of
women go weird.
Women go weird.
But isn't
period pain and all that stuff. Oh, well, it's not. It doesn't really count. That's why it takes about 5 years or more to get a diagnosis of endometriosis, because you go to the GP and you say, when I get my period, the pain is terrible, and they go, just take some paracetamol, and actually it's a serious medical condition.
But aren't people aware of this now?
To some extent.
Aware, but it's not acknowledged in many laws. It's not acknowledged in the workplace enough. And it is a big problem to know how to acknowledge it properly.
Well, exactly. And I think there's still a little bit of sniggering, perhaps. There's still a little bit of, like, oh, the eye rolling, oh, it's women going on about women's things again. And I think it's something that we really need to acknowledge, because if people aren't supported while they're going through this hugely changing phase of their lives, then it means that, for example, they drop out of the workforce because they don't feel supported at work, or they're having to take sick days and they can't explain why I need to take sick days, and there's no acknowledgement that it's legitimate even though it is. Or people think, oh crikey, I'm losing it, I can't do my job. Or people don't get the promotion, or they don't get the renewal of the contract, or what have you. So I think for kind of fairness and for people to feel supported and for that to be acknowledged as a genuine condition of health that needs support and medical support as well as like social support, it's good that we're talking about it. It really is good. So this is a group of celebrities who are going to Westminster to call for what has been called a menopause mandate, calling on the government to address inequalities that women are particularly facing, or anyone undergoing the menopause. And apparently Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker in the House of Commons, is going to be one of the first ones to sign up and announce that the Commons is going to be, quote, a menopause-friendly employer. I mean, let's be honest.
I wonder what that means.
Yes. Has a lot of issues around
that sounds like
You're like,
it sounds like an easy label.
You can see it being such a difficult thing to legislate for in any way at all, even in the workplace. If you provide sort of areas where women can go and try and get over the hot flashes, or just go and calm down, or sit. If you're asking employers to provide those sort of little lounge areas or something like that where women can just get out of the melee for a bit, how are many employers going to cope with that? A lot of people are going to then say to some women, you're shirking, you're not really menopausal, you just fancy 5 minutes off. I just think I can see what a nightmare it's going to be trying to legislate for.
I don't know if it's necessarily a case of having to provide a special space, with candles or flowers or anything like that. I think it's actually just being able to say to your line manager, this is what's going on with me, this is what I might need. And actually also to empower women to, and people undergoing the menopause, women or not. I know the GB viewers are going to be on at me about that, but it's true. It's not just women who undergo the menopause or have those hormonal conditions. It's just feeling the confidence and the knowledge that you have empowered to say, I think this is what's going on.
Do you know, it's the sheer fact that you've been able to say the word on television now. 20 years ago, I don't think you could have.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't something you spoke about. There was a conspiracy of silence because it was a women's issue and it was seen as a bit icky and difficult.
Yeah.
That it just wasn't talked about. So at least being able to talk about it is a step forward.
Yeah.
Well, I went to see the Menopause, the musical, yesterday afternoon.
Oh, well.
How was it?
It was hilarious, actually. But I tell you what, it just made me think about those spaces. The theatre, Milton Keynes Theatre, it was full of older ladies, was freezing.
Oh.
It was freezing.
Don't think that's got to do with
You think
the
it's
old-
because they were all going through hot
I
flashes?
think it was deliberate. I think it was deliberate. I don't
No,
think
that's the cost of energy.
because nobody else seemed to
They
buy
just
it.
turned the heating
I
on.
was sat there frozen, nobody else minded.
Oh.
They were all laughing at me. There you go.
Oh dear.
They
But
were
I think as long as we can talk about it, I think
Yeah.
that's the major step forward because the more we talk about it, the more we realise that it is a problem.
Well, it is half
And
the
affects-
population.
Yeah, and it doesn't affect all women, but it affects some women so badly.
So badly. And of course, we're in that situation where women are or people are having HRT, which is one of the treatments to kind of help with the symptoms, are being restricted because of supply chain issues. And GPs, all those primary carers need to step up and actually make women feel supported when they ask for help because they are listening.
I was just going to say, Tom, you haven't chipped in on this one much, Tom.
I don't have strong views on the
No, wise.
But
Wise.
again, whether it's this issue or any issue, talking about it more is always good.
Yeah, I think that's right. As we talk about then the Tory civil war, that may not be a good thing.
Yes, so this is the latest attack on Jeremy Hunt, who's really the first to properly put his head above the parapet and make clear his leadership intentions. They've been an open secret for a long time anyway. Coming under attack in the Mail on Sunday for his views on COVID. So they've recirculated this video from about 6 months into the pandemic in 2020, where he essentially calls for something resembling a zero COVID response, keeping numbers as low as humanly possible, even discussing his sister's experience going back to Beijing where she lives and being escorted to her flat, being essentially welded into it and then regularly visited by the police to make sure she doesn't leave. Makes a point of saying that we shouldn't go that far, but nevertheless still backing a very restrictive policy. And I think the reason this is coming up is obviously there's a lot of blue on blue attacks and briefings going on at the moment, we all know that. But Jeremy Hunt I think is particularly exposed because he seems to have flip-flopped on almost every major issue of recent times. I mean, when he last ran in 2019, despite being a Remainer, despite originally calling for a second referendum, tried to remake himself as a kind of Brexiteer, calling for a no deal under certain circumstances, then quietly shelved that after the election. In this case, he's again currently trying to pose as more lockdown sceptical, even told GBNEWS recently, I believe, that if he'd had his way there'd have been no lockdowns whatsoever, despite the fact that he's on record facing a very different policy. So, I mean, there was a quote doing the rounds the other day from one of his colleagues saying that he's an unprincipled windsock, and I think it's stories like this certainly help bolster that. And he feels like a politician from a slightly different age, that kind of earlier managerial. You're not really sure what they believe about any issues. They kind of just resemble kind of middle management. I think that caricature will stick to Jeremy.
Middle management, yeah.
Boris Johnson doesn't believe anything either. He's just also not middle management.
Just does it with gusto.
Yeah, he's
With a bit
all
more, yes.
bluster and dancing at the top of the, block of statues.
I just can't help thinking that it's a bit unfair, given the way, if you look at the way COVID was handled, to label somebody as being flip-flop when you had to change strategies according to the knowledge that was coming forward. Is it that shameful a thing to be a bit of a flip-flop?
I think in Jeremy Hunt's case, just because he seems to do this on so many different issues, I think that's one of the things which makes people call into question whether or not he's just adjusting what he says depending on who he's talking to, whether it's Tory members or the general public or whatever. I think that's the kind of core of the criticism.
Can I say?
No, go on. Well,
I was just going to say, Anne, you're absolutely right, though. I do think we
no,
do...
you can't say that.
Yes, we can, because we do need politicians who are able to change their mind based on changing evidence or a changing situation. We don't want someone to kind of just dogmatically stick with one thing because it was true 3 years ago and now stuff is different. We need to accept that, but they do need to have sort of principles and an evidence base that they've changed their minds on, rather than just, what is going to play best for the voters today rather than tomorrow.
What have you found in the Times?
I can't remember. Give me a clue.
Size does matter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hang on. Oh, you've made me... Okay, so this is a silly story, I think. No, in a good way. It's a chap who was a former Google data scientist, so kind of looked at huge amounts of data. Basically, online dating, Cal Surprise, is rubbish. It's good at finding people you desire, lust for, but it doesn't necessarily help you find a good partner.
Yeah.
For example, overall, the statistics definitely show that a man who's 6 foot taller, so 6 foot rather than 5'6", can basically get away with lots of other things being perhaps deficient or less than desirable.
Yeah.
So
So if he's 6'2" but ugly as a bug,
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
If he's 6'2" and earns a third of what the 5'6" guy earns, doesn't matter apparently. So don't trust your gut. It's a bad measure because it goes to all the kind of lowest common denominators.
We've got two very tall men here. How tall are you?
6'4".
6'4".
6'4"?
Very, very
No, it is. I'm 6'4". I used to be. I remember when I was at school, I was one of the tallest. Whereas now, of course, I mean, the young men now are all.
Yes, they are getting taller and taller, aren't they?
I think everyone's getting taller.
Yeah.
It's nutrition.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But there was a story out the other day, wasn't there, saying because of global warming, apparently that leads to naturally to shorter people. So we're all going to get shorter again. I think that's on Thursday. I
I'll
got
be
that in
all
the
right then.
papers.
So I think I'm
You'll
getting
be all
shorter
right.
and
You're all
shorter
right.
now.
There you go. What to kind of
You're at
combat-
5 foot level.
oh,
Because it's something to do with global warming.
interesting.
Well, that
Coping with dry conditions.
atmosphere,
It depends
a bit
where
lower
in the
now.
world.
But-
As an overall, I mean,
Yeah, apparently.
people thriving in rural Norfolk might be facing different.
We will
ecological
investigate this
pressures.
fully for you. So
Yeah.
next time you come,
Yeah, okay,
you'll know
yeah.
what Stephen's
Intriguing.
talking about.
It was in the papers. It must be true.
True, yes.
You need the whole story
You're
though.
quite tall, aren't you?
5'11", yeah.
Yeah, it's quite tall. Mine
But I
niece-
don't think that really necessarily helps me as a woman.
No, but a lot of women are getting taller as well. My niece is she's not as tall as you, but she's quite tall, and there's a lot of tall girls now.
If we all stood up now, I'd disappear below the table.
Yeah,
Teeny tiny.
you are, yes.
Whenever
You're
we
like
do
the Queen.
photographs together, I have to stand on a box, but you're not.
No, it's true.
Oh.
Quite
It's
a
true.
big box too.
If he's helping up onto the box. Lovely. Mary Ann, Tom, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.